Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Chivalry 2 stream. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We had some tech issues earlier, but we're in. We're super excited to have you guys here for this special horse-related stream. And today I am joined by two special guests. I am joined by, as you can see on your screen right now, Steve, our CEO and creative director, and I'm joined by Life, our design director. Uh, Hello, everybody.
Hey,
Be
We
here.
are,
Excited
yeah,
to talk
hello.
about some horses.
for the first time. I'm sure everybody is super stoked to be able to see horses for the very first time in game. They've seen a little bit of teasers with our teaser trailers that we put out, but this will be the first time we get to see them in action. Of course, if you don't know, right after the stream at 1:30, we'll also be setting our public test live. So everything you see, except for the map that we're playing on, actually, you'll get to play in the public test yourself. So definitely stay tuned for our social posts about that. And we are going to jump right into horses. We swapping screens. Ciao. There we go. So on my screen right now, we are on one of our new maps. This map is not on the public test, if I'm correct, and this is Wardenglade Charge. So this is our classic Wardenglade map with horses. Uh, how about we'll start with a little bit of a horse design and basically how we came to be here with these lovely horses. We know that horses definitely are part of the Chivalry 2 fantasy. Uh, Anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, I think on some level they're so core the medieval, the romance of the era that it's like we're finally the game. We're no longer the game called Chivalry without horses. They're such a core component of it. So for us, this is part of completing the dream of the ultimate medieval game for sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely, I think what was super interesting is sort of looking at other games that have horses. It was super important for us to find the right way of integrating horses into the chivalry experience. And that was, of course, an exciting journey to go through the various iterations and to end up with something where we feel like, okay, this really adds to the chivalry experience in an authentic way.
Definitely.
And it's really like a flagship feature, right? Like it's something we put the heart of the company into it to accomplish. And so the for us, it's always about capturing like the emotions of war and how horses fit into that. Is they're these huge beasts of war that are twice the size of when you have a person on top of them, super intimidating, huge, kind of massive metal that you have to deal with, and all the ways that that changes what the options that are available to you as a player are super compelling. And it's something that we're really excited to get the players' hands on because we've seen the inside the studio the way that the games become fresh again, even for people who have been there since the earliest of the days. So it's exciting times.
So horses have been in development for quite a long time for Chivalry 2. Early on, we had some kind of early promotional material. Uh, what has been kind of in the works behind the scenes to make horses what they are today, and why has it been such a long process?
Well, I think that really is because of how core they are to the fantasy, right? Like, it was just not acceptable for us to put in like a gimmick level horse. It had to be a horse that tried to do something new, and our target was really the best horse for FPS players, the best horse that for the actual experience of battling on top of it and using its motion and its weight and size as an actual weapon of war. So for us, it was we weren't going to release the horse until it was, on the level of how we treat the melee combat system, the very core of the game. So we had to get it right.
I think to maybe just call out, let's say, two design pillars or objectives we always had on the radar. One being, I think overall it's part of the chivalry core experience that you can get these nice hero moments. Like in one moment you're in the carnage of the battlefield and everything's flying around you basically, but then suddenly you step up and you feel like the greatest hero in that carnage. And to transpose these hero moments onto the horse, literally, was really key to get right, and to strike the right balance there between obviously not making them an overpowered experience, but integrating them well, but making sure you can have these hero moments while on the horse. And then secondly, Chivalry has a very game feel driven experience. It's very rich and deep, but ultimately it's supposed to feel right. Sometimes you can't even explain the fun, right? It just feels good and rewarding and satisfying to use. And to get the horse to that level, that was a nice, exciting journey. But yeah, I think we're really happy with how it ends up playing.
Absolutely. I know from my experience getting to play with the horses in the play tests and having hands-on experience, which our players will assume that horses definitely feel very unique and definitely feel like a powerful beast.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of demonstrating on stream a couple movements here. How did the early horses function, and what kind of changes have horses had along the way to change their movement, change their place within the game?
Yeah, I think so. One of the first iterations I remember was a very, say, straightforward implementation where you essentially control the horse as alongside its body axis, basically. So if you press forward, the horse would always move forward no matter where you're looking. That's a very direct implementation of movement. Has some advantages, but ultimately, it was really important for us to get that sensation right. Like, talked a lot about how it is to actually ride the horse and get the feeling of pulling the reins and putting the heels into the horse's body. So didn't that kind of direct control scheme didn't quite live up to our say expectations or standards. So that was one of the core points of iteration where we went through a few movement schemes.
And because it is an FPS that we're making this game for, it's so important that the horse is responsive and feels good, but it also is a weighted FPS. So we need to have the horse have a lot of agility, not just be a motorcycle. It's not a vehicle to just get from one place to another and hack people along the way. Of course, you can do that too, and that's a lot of fun, but you can actually have extended combat between yourself and another person on horseback or the people on feet because the horse is really a new movement system that is a whole new field for players to master, and it really is the challenge of creating it was really about um, navigating the responsiveness versus the weightiness and how the actions would flow into each other when you change directions and when you change your motion so that you have the agility you need to use it on the battlefield with 64 other people.
How about what are some of the challenges of introducing horses into Chivalry 2 gameplay?
Well, I think one challenge was certainly the core combat.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have battle space where people fight on foot and then suddenly we inject the horse into it, how to make that feel right, how to make the movement and combat work nicely together. I think along the way we always try to be courageous basically with innovating and trying out new things, and that also means discarding some bits. We tried out some interesting basically combat systems where you're more restricted in where you can strike while on horseback, which felt really not like the chivalry way, like having the free-form combat and full control where you strike at all times was super important. But getting that right into a good space, that was one key challenge.
Yeah, and I think the other key challenge is always balance because if you make one player feel incredible, then the other ones feel just as small in comparison. So I think one of the ways we kind of changed our mindset as we were creating the horse, initially it was, at least in my mind, it was going to be kind of an APC sort of vehicle where it's super heavily armored. It's really hard to take out. And when you're on one, you're imposing in that sense. But we actually ended up in a place that feels better for chivalry, I think, where the lethality is just super high no matter what. So what horses do is they make it more dangerous for everybody. No one's safe, and it's this sort of glass cannon kind of thing. I mean, the horse can be incredibly imposing with its physicality, but it can't withstand many sword blows.
I think that's
Yeah, that
pretty
was
accurate
super.
to a real horse too.
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
it was super cool to see. Of
No
course,
horses were harmed in the testing of our.
Absolutely not.
yeah, going through the various iterations and playtesting was really cool to see. people adopting like counter strategies over time. Like in the beginning, I think everyone was a bit like, running around like headless chicken, basically. The horse is hunting me down. But then over time, people started to use like, the appropriate tools, spears, halberds, anything that, were authentic anti-cavalry weapons, and started to use them at great effect. So I think definitely something that worked out really well, how sort of the horse fit into the existing combat systems and how the balancing really came out naturally from that.
Absolutely. Life Hero are a little bit robot-y, if you want to take a look at that. Well, I take a look at these horses. So on the field right now, we actually have 2 of our horses. In our Tenosia stream, we showcased the horse for that faction. Each faction has like their own custom looking horse as well. So Mason has this big burly red and black, really kind of gothic looking armor, and of course the Agatha horse over here has a little bit more adornment, blue, gold, white detailing. Really nice lion on the hip here. And one of the other key things here is that if you hadn't seen already, I kind of was running around. Once you board your horse will actually change to match your faction, similar to how shields work in Chivalry 2. Like if you pick up an enemy shield, it'll change color. So that's how we help keep some visual clarity, so even at a distance on a horse, who you're fighting, who your enemy is, all that kind of stuff.
That's actually another neat little design history there. Just speaking about the model of the horse and the size, iterating on the correct size and how you can make sure that the height difference between the mounted rider and foot soldiers is feeling right. Let's just say the horse was not always this size. So yeah.
I think it does feel very accurate. It definitely feels like a big, substantial animal, but it also feels like, an accurately sized animal, especially for the period. Yeehaw!
Fun to be able to throw its weight around against people too. I think one
Absolutely.
thing for me, like that changes the most when you're on a horse, is the way you approach your opponents, groups of them, especially. I've always been kind of the person that dives in anyway, no matter how many opponents there are, and just kind of see how it goes. But when that happens, you're kind of kept at the outside. You can't like penetrate through them. You've kind of forced to deal with their blocks and through them one at a time. But on the horse, it's a totally different experience where it's much more like human bowling. You're just riding through the crowd and trampling everybody out of the way and hacking them as you go. And of course, their blades are coming at you, so it's much more aggressive kind of. You get moments where you feel like a bulldozer, which is great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and speaking of hero
yeah,
moments, like doing the drive-by swings, like riding by a group of people and doing the decisive strike is super rewarding.
and
Especially when you push through the line of melee users up front and get to the archers in the back and cause havoc back there.
I've seen some comments on Reddit about people who have designated horse users to be the archer killers, so I expect we'll
There's
see
some
some
truth to
posting about
that.
that.
Yep.
Certainly, yeah.
In addition to using a horse to kind of bowl over people, both of you had touched on that there are ways to counter to the horses, and that's something that we've definitely taken into consideration. Is we want horses to be fun to use, but also fun to play against, and we don't want horses to feel like if you're not on a horse, you're having the worst time ever. So we've definitely wanted to strike a balance between mounted combat and foot combat. I know that there's some community concerns about, will horses be overpowered and all that kind of stuff, but that's something that our design team has definitely spent a lot of time on.
Yeah, it's like Steve said as well, that once you get into a group of people and your momentum stops, either because you decide to go into the 1v1, 1vx combat, you start to become quite vulnerable because you get attacked from all sides. Players with long range weapons like the halberd you're spotting there definitely work really well against the horse. So it's really a high risk, high reward vehicle to get some cool moments on the battlefield.
Absolutely. One person in chat says, "Can you third person on a horse?" So I just swapped to third person on my camera screen here, just so you can see first and third person is available. We can keep talking about design, but let's swap over to kind of horses in game and how exactly do you even use one of these things? Let's start with the basics. So what are the basics of horse movement?
Well, maybe let's start actually before that. How you actually get on a horse?
That is a good point.
Because that was actually something we discussed quite a bit as well. Like, how does it fit into the flow of our matches? If you think of team objective maps, like how do horses fit in there? I think one big component was always to leverage the thematic and narrative hooks of the cavalry charge. If you think of historical battles, like the moment when the cavalry charged in, it's a pivotal moment in the battle. So as such, it really lends itself to think about our narrative focused to your maps and how the horses would fit in there.
Yeah, so you get these great moments. Like you can come across horses in the level sometimes that are placed there, or you can grab them from another player, like killing them and stealing them. That's happening all the time. The horses change hands rather frequently. But the other thing is, as Life was pointing to, we wanted to build it into the narrative experience of the team objectives. So you get these horse waves where they come in as a group. You'll get a whole wave of horses at one time. It totally changes the battlefield. You have to react to it. And we've intentionally spaced those out throughout the map so they happen at the pace we want to, and each map is different. And it fits the narrative. So sometimes both teams get horses at the same time, and other times one team gets them, and you have to deal with that until your horses arrive for reinforcements.
And like Steve said, there's always on our maps there sort of horse spawners effectively spread out over the map, where it's worth to get a little bit out of your way to grab one of these horses and ride into combat as well. But yeah, once you're on the horse, like I mentioned earlier, getting some of the organicness through the controls was very important to make it feel natural, like pulling the reins, pushing the heels into the horse. So as such, you can control your forward motion with your camera, with the mouse. So as you move the camera left to right, your horse starts to weave. So it's generally following your reins effectively as you look around. But other types of movement, like the strafing, is always strictly to the horse's body orientation. So you have that precise control in combat.
Looks like he's doing a little dance. Very nice footwork. So we've talked about a little bit about kind of like controlling the horse specifically, and we've talked about like past iterations. How can somebody kind of make the most out of controlling their horse? So one of the examples that I can think of is when you're on a horse, you kind of always want to keep the momentum moving forward, and momentum is what keeps you alive. So how exactly can a player keep momentum, and what kind of different speeds do we have for horses?
Yeah, that maps exactly into how we wanted to allow players to navigate on the horse, because as you can see, like if you hit strafe, you go purely sideways. And if you hit strafe and forward, you go kind of diagonal. If you go forward, you go forward. And the reason for that is because when you're fighting people on the ground or the horses around you in these environments, keeping momentum isn't always going forward. You can't always get a clean path through. It's not always the safest option. So you want these options to kind of deploy the air brakes if you're thinking about jet fighting. That was one of the dog fighting. That was one of the references we used. We wanted some parts of that, and we wanted other parts to be more like helicopters in a sense, where you're more hovering around each other, and that's what happens at the slower movement speeds. Is the horses maintain momentum by really keeping the distance that they desire and the angle between their opponent, which of course plays in well with the use of the alternate strike or the other strikes. You can use that. You have higher agility at a lower speed that you can use with your swings to kind of get the angle on your opponent. and then at a higher speed, navigating through the whole level. That's more about obstacle avoidance and battlefield awareness.
Yeah, definitely the few times that, well, more than a few. The times that I die the most on the horse is user error and bumping into something and getting swarmed by a bunch of people. So definitely staying alive on a horse means staying mobile.
Yeah, but that's the other element about all parts of chivalry is that there should always be a way to mastery, right? Where by learning certain ins and outs of whatever you're using, you realize, oh, okay, I should probably not get stuck somewhere in melee combat. I should keep moving with the horse. That's an easy way of keeping momentum, is just to never get bogged down into close quarter combat. And over time, I'm sure people will master it in ways that we haven't even foreseen yet. But yeah.
Speaking
Yeah, that's one
of
the
combat, sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just saw that you were carrying a lance around. I just want to say, speaking of combat, the lance is definitely one of those weapons that are pivotal for horse use.
Exactly.
Yeah, the jousting fantasy. You want to do it live? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the jousting fantasy, and that's one of the ways we try and balance the horse in part so that it's fun regardless of your skill level, right? Because the lance is something that you're given when you get on a horse, and it breaks after a few uses, but it's an extremely powerful weapon where you can use your momentum and actually, it's called a couch lance, drive that into your opponent for massive damage.
Nice. I saw that. Hit to the rear.
We want to line it up a clean. Let's line up a clean one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Fair.
I'll start by this fire thing. Ready?
Yep.
He's already started. He's cheating. He has momentum.
Oh. So write it down and do it again.
Oh, head-on collision. So you actually saw there on screen that Life lost his lance. It actually broke. So they are not an infinite weapon. They do break after a certain period of time while you're riding.
Yes, that was one of the means, of course, to strike the right balance between making the use of the lance like super rewarding, and that's basically your hero moment, right? That's your chance to shine. But essentially limiting the use of that, yeah, to keep the balance in check.
It looks so majestic. I'm kind of watching both of you on screen while we chase each other around. It looks very majestic seeing the horses run and the horse armor flopping in the wind and oh, some actual sword combat. Oh, his body's getting dragged away. That's so dramatic.
Yeah, you can see there a little bit. I mean, we're just kind of messing around here, but you can see how the movement is very different once you're engaged with someone and you're kind of in that dance versus when you're just riding each other down like the Jets.
Somebody in chat says, strafing looks good. This looks sick. Yo, looks so cool. This looks dope. I'm liking these reviews, everybody.
Oh, got my horse. So that happens a lot is your actual horse will die, and now he's kicking me around.
Speaking of kicking, the horse has a kick that we haven't talked about too much. The horse actually has a couple different kicks. Yeah.
Yeah, has 4 legs, 2 kicks. One of the very cool maneuver you can do, very satisfying in close quarter combat. And it's of course very interesting how just based on the weapon range, using your weapon mainly to the sides is just way more efficient. And if the enemy is in front of you or behind, then the kicks come into play.
The kicks definitely look awesome.
Yeah, the horses end up becoming this kind of like a lightly armored bully in a sense, where they can really control the space around them, and players, they can just bat them aside physically, but they're still, have to be careful. You have to defend yourself from strikes.
So the horse really becomes extension here of your movement. Ooh, nice kill. So not only do you have to control, where you're swinging as you normally would, you also need to have some good horse footwork.
Yeah.
One
You
of the
have
things you can do on the lance as well, as I ride in here, you can press mouse 1 after you have it cooched to get like that final last lunge, just as a way of making the jousting fantasy a little bit more skill-based and interesting.
dun, 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 dun. Bam! Oh my goodness, his ragdoll was so dramatic. I
Yeah, you
have
get
to
some
admit,
high
yeah,
velocity impacts.
it's extremely satisfying to kill somebody on a horse with a lance because their body just goes absolutely flying.
There's also a
Somebody,
whole range of BOs you might have heard as you get on the
yeah,
horse and interact with it. Your character acknowledges that. So it's funny lines.
go horse, go! Somebody in chat wants to know, can you use specials on a horse?
You sure can.
Yes.
So actually, the way the horse damage works is momentum based, right? So now all of a sudden, it's not just about hitting people; it's about hitting people where you have the highest delta in the velocity, where you're going more faster than them. And so the special attacks can do ridiculous damage if you time it right, but the longer wind up time, you cover a lot of distance on the horse, so it's difficult to land, but rewarding.
Yeah, you have to make sure you've got good aim, good steering. It's definitely something that people are going to have to practice. You may feel when you get on a horse the first time that you're missing your hits. You know, as much as it is with base chivalry combat, it definitely takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it.
What's
It's just
also
a
quite
head lift, sorry.
I know it's just quite interesting how, especially for beginners, I think arguably the basic slash is the most prominent attack on foot. And it works really well on foot, but on horseback, overheads and stabs are, of course, much more efficient based on the distance you bridge to the opponent. So it's really quite a different distribution of attacks you normally see while on horseback.
You gotta do a fight where neither of our horses are almost dead.
You got to get a fair match. You got a full health horse. Somebody in chat wants to know, can we behead the horse? Maybe I'll have to find out in game. Give it a try.
What a question.
I know. I mean, we did introduce beheading people into our game, so are we really want to talk? So we have a question from Chronic Mayhem. Can the horse die while the player lives? Yes, so we've seen that a few times while these two are fighting, that one of them will lose a horse, and you just kind of roll off and you can continue to fight. Alternatively, you can also, as we just saw, kill the rider and leave the horse alive, and in that
That always
opportunity,
works. Yep.
yeah, somebody else from your team can steal the horse, or if it's a case where you happen to kill a rider and you're not on a horse, you can always steal their horse.
And if you're Jen, are you looking at the horse that's dismounted right now?
Yeah, I see it.
Watch this. So if a horse is not being ridden, you can actually strike it from a distance or up close and use it as an environment trap. It will kick when it's hit, and you can get kills that way, which is really satisfying.
And pick up the weapons stuck to it.
To line it up right, and then it'll get a mass AoE kick on everybody. Unhappy Bastard wants to know, how much HP does a horse have?
I think it's 400, but so you often are hitting the horse and the player at the same time. So in order to make it so that you don't easily take out the horse by just targeting it, it takes a couple more hits than a person, but the way that it plays out is not like it's actually 400 health. You're a lot more vulnerable to taking kind of pot shots where you can't defend yourself on the horse's legs and stuff like that. So
There's a lot of very specific questions in chat, which I love to see because it means people are really interested.
Let's do it,
One of the ones is, can I ride a horse with no arms? I don't see why not.
yeah, you would be able to. Yeah. Although headbutting probably wouldn't have the range to hit people very well, but you could try.
It's a good look, though.
I look forward to the video. Yeah.
Amazing.
The nice thing about you guys already said it, but the control of which team has the horses ends up being a pretty substantial factor. So killing the enemy riders that provides your team with the horse. That's a big part of the strategy.
Yeah, so in often cases, it's kind of better to kill the rider so that you can give the cavalry to your team. Of course, if somebody on a horse is just being super annoying, killing the horse may be the best option there as well. There's been a few questions of asking, can the horses jump? I don't believe that we have horse jumping, no.
Nope.
They cannot. Can we show some ground versus horse, maybe?
Yeah, while you guys are setting that up, I had a question in chat. Can archers use horses? And most certainly archers can use horses.
Yes. Something that we obviously mindful about. Mounted archers were very successful historically, and making sure it's not too overpowered in our game is important. But just how it works from just naturally from the moving around and aiming at people is yeah, it's very difficult. So there's a nice mastery aspect to it, and it fits really well into the game.
Set yourself up there. I'm watching.
Later. So it's really important to block that first strike on a horse because they come in with so much momentum. Let's just spawn another horse whenever one drops this. And see, with the momentum, the movement, I'm still able to keep my distance from my opponent when I want to, and then move in for a strike. So range is still the most important factor.
Oh, good fight.
One other thing is, because of the way we design these kind of features, we give the player so much creativity in the way that they can do things. So the balance will just be ongoing because we know players will surprise us with the strategies and the metas that they develop.
For sure. Oh, there you are. Back on you. Oh. The ragdolls of the bodies falling off the horses is truly, it makes me laugh every time. So, what kind of weapons should people on horses be riding if they after their lance breaks? You think what's kind of the best choices there? In your
It's on your
opinion.
strategy. If you
Yeah.
want to ride around and just kind of cleave people without slowing down, some of the bigger, heavier weapons can be good for that, or the hard-hitting, fast weapons. But if you want to get into more prolonged exchanges, then a lot of the smaller, faster weapons are better at that. Because it can take the horse a little bit to orient itself. Having a faster weapon kind of helps you keep people away from you when you don't want them there. So it's not a good strategy to use a lance in close combat.
Yeah. Looks like a struggle. There you go.
Yeah, and in a way, it works out just like in history, where any short one-handed weapon works really well, rider versus rider. But of course, if you're interested in defeating people on the ground, then going for long weapons. Great sword is great. Different axes. Highland sword.
I see. What about best weapons to counter a horse? I'm thinking long range weapons, obviously. Maybe something like a spear plant would do well as well to counter horses, especially with their charging directly at you.
Yeah,
Yes.
and some of the items you can place on the ground have more meaning with the horses in there.
Yeah.
I'll take your question.
Hurricane Turtle wants to know, how does the spike trap work against horses?
Well, you can see here that work the same way as the spear, and as don't strike with it. Leave it couched. As he hits me, it actually causes the horse to stagger. So that's a great way to start swarming people and basically kind of sticks the momentum of your opponent so that you can control them.
Like if you have two people who set up these spear plans, it actually becomes quite challenging as a rider to fight them.
Yeah, I think that really comes
There you
back to the idea that you know, we really take into consideration, you know, how it is to both fight on the horse and be fighting the horse. That we want we want players to have as many options as possible to, you know, fight and defend, so they don't feel like, you know, horses are totally overwhelming them, but also making horses super fun to actually use. What about you guys have any super secret horse tech that you like, or how do you feel most successful while you're riding a horse?
For me, when I can mix up the movement, because people kind of expect you to ride around and do these big circles around them, so you can do that, but then kind of lull them into safety, and then kind of quickly break up and catch them with your agility. So I think keeping your speed, avoiding obstacles in the world, and playing with your agility to surprise players and hit them when they don't think you're coming in for a strike.
Ooh, nice dodge. Yeah, as
For me, it's actually, like, obviously the lance charges at high speed are really cool, but I think for me, one of the most fun things is actually the one-on-one combat on the horse against another rider. It's just such a cool dogfight dance, basically, that it's really dynamic.
It's one arm.
Did you lose an arm?
Yeah.
oh no, celebratory horn toot.
Yep.
We've seen it a little bit, but Steve in particular has been showing off that you can increase and decrease the speed of your horse in order to get wider or more narrow turns. So getting the hang of, you know, how best to maneuver your horse. Yeah, just like that. By braking, slamming on the brakes, getting yourself around a really tight, narrow turn without colliding it. That's something that players will definitely have to try out for themselves and get used to how best to maneuver.
Yeah, it's actually something we didn't, I think, really plan. It's just sort of was there one moment and we knew it was cool. Basically, the almost like a drifting movement where you can move your horse around. It's not like you have to, like, it's a sort of a certain combination of commands, but it's super satisfying once you get the hang of it. You
I like
brake basically a little bit. You pull
drifting.
that. You pull the handbrake, and then you heave the horse around.
I want to give
The horse's movement never interrupts your actions as a player on top of it. So while you're doing that, you can still swing at people, and so the movement and the combat, the freedom there is really the story we're trying to get across here. It's a whole sandbox for you guys to master and play with. And we're also only showing one-on-one, but when you're fighting multiple people, this agility on the horse really keeps you alive in ways that otherwise you just get swarmed and outnumbered.
Absolutely, and this is really the beginning for horses. So I don't know if we mentioned, but horses will be present on all of the new maps. There will be cavalry waves and also certain spawn points on certain maps. Like some of the new TO maps, you'll be able to find horses on the map and pick those up. And, you know, balance around horses is something that we're always going to be keeping an eye on. So we definitely look forward to hearing player feedback about that. Yeah, I want to give an opportunity to both of you, Life and Steve. Maybe, what's your top tip when it comes to players who will be, you know, grabbing a horse for the very first time and maybe want to know the best way to make the most of their horse?
Yeah, I would give two different tips at different levels. If you're just getting used to the game or struggling with the horse at first, then your best bet is the lance and getting a lot of distance and riding people down. And then as you get more familiar and comfortable, you really want to master the strafing and knowing when to kind of turn on the gas and get out of a situation versus use your lower speed mobility, agility to help yourself out of that corner. It basically comes down to know when to get away and know when to just reposition for a strike that might surprise your opponent. It's all a mind game in the end.
Yeah, definitely keeping for beginners. I would say keep to the open spaces. Stay mobile while on the horse, and use sort of surprise elements to your advantage. I think for the more intermediate players, like learning that range, playing with the range, because like Steve said, like while you do your attack moves, you can still move around on the horse, and you're quite agile, and that yeah, it's both very effective and also super rewarding to use.
For sure.
The thing you can't see here, but because we're just a few players, but in the actual servers, the horses add to the spectacle of the fight. And one of our core references is always the Battle of the Bastards, because you get this sense where Jon Snow in each moment is almost like, how am I still alive? That chaos. The horses add so much chaos to the battlefield, and they're very large, so the battlefields feel more full with them there, and that's something we're really happy about.
Yeah, especially when there's a full game and as many horses as we spawned in. It definitely feels chaotic, but in the best way. We've got about 8 minutes before the test is supposed to go live. Is there any other design topics or horse-related combat topics that either of you would like to bring up on stream?
I think we covered a lot. We covered movement, the basic combat, lance combat.
Yeah, I think we touched on,
Yeah, we got
definitely
most of it.
all of the key things here. I'm just gonna give a quick look at our chat here to see if there's any questions that they have that maybe we didn't answer while I watch you guys fight. Pope Mobile 10 just says friendly fire question mark exclamation mark. There's definitely a risk of hitting teammates at all times in Chivalry, and that includes while on a horse.
Yeah, so a lot of the like bowling over features and knocking people down really happen against opponents and not allies, because at first you just trample your own team constantly. So we fixed that, but I mean, you got to watch your swing still.
Reepith wants to know, can I heal my horse with health packs or war horns?
No, no.
No horsey heals. Sorry, guys. The other big question, I've not been ignoring it, but do the horses poop? Says Dome Daddy 69. I don't believe that they can poop on command. There's definitely horse poop on maps that you guys could pick up.
Yeah. It's definitely on our radar, let's put it this way.
On our radar. Nice. Oh.
Just showing there, you can hit people even if they're downed from horseback. Because you actually lean out of the saddle. Like when I turn to the side here, my character actually leans over the top of the horse and kind of displaces themselves so that they can reach down lower as you would. So our goal was to integrate the player and the horse rather than just stick one on top.
Oh my goodness, your ragdoll flew directly at the camera.
Nice. Some people might be wondering, like, oh, why wouldn't you just always block against the horse if you're on foot? But the momentum-based damage actually causes the disarm to happen a lot faster too. So if someone's trying to just defend, they'll be disarmed very quickly against someone on a horse. So you have to counter or you have to be aggressive. That's very intentional.
Ziggy wants to know, do horses take bonus damage from chop or blunt?
We don't have a difference in that right
No.
The riders still do.
Yeah.
We have a request in chat for some first-person footage, so I'm just going to swap over to a horse real quick and ride around. Oh, that was a big miss. As you can see, I've got the lance in my right hand here.
The push on the lance, because you can't really see that if you're not at first.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. As you can see, I can jab with the lance as well. It's not as effective, especially at short range, but let's speed it up. I'm getting you. Bonk.
Same team.
It's just a demonstration.
Oh,
Demolished.
Oh dear.
We have a question. Are horses available in all modes, game types, maps? So far, the horses are only available in the maps that will be new to this update. So we have 2 new TO maps and 2 new TDM maps. We are on one of them. This one is not in the test, but TDM Desert will be in the test, and you guys will be able to play team deathmatch with horses there. And the other 2, as I mentioned, they are team objective maps, and they will also have horses on them there. Yeah, so that's where you'll be able to find horsies for now. Tengri wants to know, are you guys planning only horse game modes? That sounds very chaotic, and I think it would be quite fun.
me too.
Pretty sure it would be.
No!
Zero subtlety. See, the pace of your actions just gets so much higher with the faster weapon on the horse.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let me swap to this so I can read chat a little bit easier. We've got 3 minutes left. I just want to read through any more questions for Steve or Life in particular. This one's not, but Board Game Nerd says, is Coxwell coming back? Yes, Coxwell is coming back. It won't be in the public test, but Coxwell will be making a return in the Tenosian Invasion update. Dr. Monocle says, unseating riders, can it be done without killing the rider? So can you knock somebody off a horse without killing them?
The best way to do that is killing the horse.
Yeah, only through horse fatalities right now.
No!
Neutral observer.
Oh! Blech! My head. We talked a little bit about in the beginning stream, at the beginning of the stream, about the challenges of designing horses, but Sheldon just wants to know, was designing horses difficult? I think that I can kind of speak for the design team that, you know, designing a moving creature that moves in so many different directions, and we have to think about how they're going to interact on all the maps and interact with all the players. It's definitely a complicated endeavor, but one that we've definitely put a lot of time and testing and effort into. So we hope that it comes across that way.
It's no pain, no gain.
Absolutely.
And especially with the horses, because we're trying to tread new ground there. We're not looking at other games and being like, yeah, we're happy with that. We want just our version of that. It's more like, no, horses haven't been done well enough yet, and we need to tread new ground to get there. So very challenging whenever you're doing that. Also, just iterating for the game feel. It's so important that it, it integrates and it makes the game more fun that horses have been added. So yeah, it was very challenging.
We're gonna be wrapping up here. It is now 1:30. I don't want to tab out while I'm streaming to check, but the live test should be live or live very soon if it's not already. After this stream, the one and only Moon will actually be streaming with our publishers Tripwire, and they'll be streaming over on the Tripwire Twitch channel. So if you can't play the test, maybe you're watching from work or from school or wherever you may be watching, definitely tune into their stream after this. And if you want to play yourself, now's the time. You get to play early from right now until 10:30 Eastern time later tonight. Thank you so much, Steve and Life, for being here with me today and walking us through horses. We really appreciate your time.
You as well.
We'll see you guys on the battlefield. Bye.
Bye.